Everyone, vomit.
Leave that one in.
Yeah, sure. Just
use that one.
Just for the sake of it. Hey, everyone, back to another exciting episode of Attacker Productions. Today, I bank up being joined once again by Jimmy.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not used to flying solo on these.
I know it's weird. We talked about a little bit on Sunday. Kind of going over some of the stuff we haven't talked about yet, and with the new set literally around the corner, I kind of want to touch base on a deck that both me and Jimmy I feel like are interested when it comes to our shop, and that's Magenta. And yeah, Magenta got really good because of an errata allowing it to play extra cards. So let's kind of go over real quick. We're going to go over all the cards and more or less, I think, just kind of explain why this card may be good for the deck or why it may not be good. And if anything we missed in this conversation, definitely point it out to us in the comments so we could be proven wrong.
Like always.
Exactly. So the leader normally, before the errata, was like, you can include non-villainous cards in your deck and treat villainous cards in your hand as if they had no specific cost, but now it's been changed to be villainous battle cards, if I recall correctly. I don't have the errata up in front of me.
Yeah, so you cannot include non-villainous battle cards. So you can run non-villainous extra cards and unisons in this deck. I don't know if unisons are really worth running because your color base is really strange. Unless it's a one-drop support unison, I don't see any reason to run a unison in this list because the base of the deck is so strong. But opening up to extra cards is huge.
Yes. And just kind of put it out there, we'll talk about the one-drops when we get to that point, but there's a key extra card that allows you to play a one-drop from your drop, I think. And that negate right there alone is what people are kind of like, this deck's going to get broken because of that. Because the ability to potentially, if your opponent does not control your board, you could pretty much go, all right, pay 1 energy, negate your attack. I need you to discard 3 or 4 cards now. When this card attacks, look up to 5 cards from top of your deck, add 1 villainous card, shuffle your deck afterwards. So it's great for just kind of like the AOD leader. It allows you to find the cards you need early on. And then awakens 4 or less, 2 or more villainous cards. 4 or less life, or 2 or more villainous cards in your energy. Which is ridiculous. So you can just awaken turn 2 if you charge right. It's a draw 2, go down to 6 life. And then you become the awakened side of Magenta, which has the now the permanent is treat villainous cards in your hand as if they had no specific cost. Auto, when this card attacks, draw 1, and then activate main. Once returned for 1 energy, you play up to 1 villainous card whose energy's cost is less than or equal to your current energy. I think that's really good. Does it beat the AOD ability? Kind of, because that one's kind of locked to an energy cost, I think, of 2 or less, and you have to mix with the Majin Food to get those 3 drops down there as well. But on turn 4, you're able to play I think there's a 4-drop villainous card, so you're able to play the bigger ones on turn 4 for just 1 energy instead.
So it kind of keeps you on a curve where AOD in a way kind of tops out at a point with its free plays. This deck kind of keeps you on a curve, and in the future, if they print even higher cost villainous cards, which I don't know if they will because they printed so many in the set,
they did.
It will still be able to be played, and they could kind of balance the power of the card based off of its energy cost, which is I think is a really cool way of keeping of being able to keep a deck relevant for a long time without breaking it.
Yeah. And let's just go over the one special card that they're printing for this one. This comes when you get the leader, you get this card as well. It is the Z battle card. It's game of 2, and this is the one we were definitely confused by because of the whole ruling originally, but then they changed it to where, or they did change it, where your Z deck doesn't necessarily have to meet the criteria of your leaders, your main deck's criteria. So, game of 2. If you have a villainous card in play, you treat this card as if it has no specific cost in all areas. So that way you could just pay for whatever energy you want. You just got at least pay 1. Is a 10k auto. When this card is played, you may choose 1 villainous card, place it in your owner's drop. If you do, this card gets plus 10,000 power and double strike for the turn. So for 1 energy and 1 extra card, 1 Z energy card, that is a 20k double strike, which is fantastic. Activate main, limit 1, place 1 card from your hand to the bottom of your deck. Remove this card from game till the end of your opponent's next turn. If your opponent activates a villainous or an encounter skill, draw 1 card. That can be pretty handy because if you play this card first, swing it right away, get the attack out of the way, then activate the main. Then from that point on, the rest of your turn, if they choose to negate, you draw a card.
Yeah, it really incentivizes you to turn this card sideways before activating the effect due to its 20k double strike. So it's kind of a risk reward where if your opponent doesn't decide to counter or deal with this card during the battle step, then you get rewarded because you get the extra attack and you still get to activate main. But I feel a lot of times, just to be safe, you're just going to drop this card and activate main
For sure.
in a lot of situations. The draw one is nice, especially if your opponent is going to be activating multiple. But I feel like a lot of floodgates are just going to shut the deck down to begin with, and you only need one. So getting a draw one, again, this card is going to be very high highs and very low lows, I believe.
In your opinion, as a someone who plays yellow, would you tech one of these in just in case you come across the Villainous matchup?
Yellow is now getting such a good base of good Z battle cards. I don't know if I would run this over per se the like one drop Frieza that's just a 15k.
Yeah.
This is a 10k attacker and you can't combo on it and make it essentially the same. And if you get the draw, then you can replace the card in your hand. I think if you're letting the Villainous archetype go too far, the 4 cards that they might be discarding out of your hand, the one draw is not going to make that any less bad. So I don't see this being very potent in many yellow Z decks. If you just have the extra slot, why not? But I feel like you're going to fill it up with stuff like your dual attack Gohans, your 15k Friezas, or whatever card that you're playing for your archetype.
So let's go ahead and go to the one drops. So pretty much every card we're going to showcase, like Jimmy said, they made a lot of them. It pretty much replaced the black archetype for this set. But yeah, so one drops, King Gurumis, whatever his name is. When this card's play, you may draw one card. If you do negate this card's skills for the game, that means you also lose secondary auto if you choose to get this draw, and you also lose the Villainous skill. Secondary auto is when you activate this card's Villainous, negate this card's skills for the game, and this is actually read the exact same way, if I recall correctly, as Mercenary Tau when it comes to the secondary auto. But Mercenary Tau's first auto is when this card's played, you search top 5 cards of your deck, add one Villainous card to it. It didn't negate this card's. It says skill, but I think if it has already, it's going to be eroded to be skills.
There's been a lot of discussion on this card, and I've heard it go both ways. The kind of general consensus, from what I've understood, is that it just negates its first auto skill, which I feel like it's just a typo. It should say skills. But the way I've heard it rolled, it just negates the first auto, and you still keep the Villainous and then the second auto. And of course, once you trigger Villainous, it'll negate all of the card skills. But I don't see why you would ever need to negate that auto, saying that it's when it's played and it can only be played once. Yep. And it would, I mean, you can replay it, but I feel like this will get eroded to just be card skills. Personally, I think these are probably the best cards in the deck. I think you're going to be running 4/4 on both of these, just because it's cheap Villainous. You could drop one, not even worry about the effect on one, then follow it up with the other, and get its own effect by also triggering the other one's effect. So you're going to get value off of these cards whether or not you choose to do its first auto effect. These are also replayable with cards like Playtime's Over. If you want to run Power Burst, you could just pick the black one back up.
I didn't think about that one, yeah.
So you can replay it in that way, but I feel like Playtime's Over is just a better option because it's also a one drop that is just a side grade to Power Burst, which is just play a one drop from your drop area.
Going into the 2 drops, we got the Golden Frieza, which is kind of the negate one, and this one's worded for this particular way for a reason, because they just don't want you potentially having a board of cards. Negate the attack. If there are one or fewer Villainous cards in your battle area, you play this card. So, yeah, during your opponent's turn, it is a 1-cost card. But if you have 2 villainous cards in your battle area, this card will not play itself. So this is a great, I think, if you just maintain just the 1 card, or if your opponent's like, okay, cool, I'm going to swing into your battle cards. Cool, let them get down to 1 battle card and immediately just pay 1 energy, play this one, make them discard a card, and then you have a card to crack back with now.
Hmm. Not much to say about this card. It's just good. 1-drop negate 15k, and you get a possible play off of it. If you sequence correctly, you could have 1 battle card in play this, trigger Villainous, then play time's over, trigger Villainous again. So it's just a solid card. I feel like this is going to be one of the stronger Villainous. There's a lot of cards in this archetype. Some of them are better than others, so you really have to pick the ones you want to see and pick the ones you don't really want to see. But I think they all have a place within the deck.
Going to the Broly. Auto when this card attacks, use one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost 3 or less, instant it to the owner's warp, and it has an activate main, limit 1 for 1 energy. If your leader card is a Broly card, and you send this card from your drop to your warp, return up to 1 Broly card without super combo, and with energy cost of 7 or less from your drop to your hand. It's one of those cards where you could get out for 1 energy for the Villainous deck, but it helps with kind of clearing out cards. I don't think this won't be definitely a 4 of. I see this kind of being, especially since it's interest 3 or less, maybe 2 in a deck if you are worried about, or you just decide if you're worried about decks that have cards that tend to want to linger and you just want to remove them, the way of doing it. Actually, it means only really good for the black. I think it's for any Broly deck, really. Yeah, it's as long as your leader's Broly.
Yeah, this card really shines in the Black Broly archetype. It's really interesting going over these cards because usually it's locked into one archetype, but since these are made to support various archetypes while also being a self-contained Villainous deck, really have to kind of expand your thinking when it comes to these cards. But I've been testing Black Broly a lot with the new Z Leader and all of the new promos that the deck has gotten. This card is fantastic in the deck. You do a lot of bursting, so this card ends up in the drop area a lot. And like I said, you do a lot of bursting, so you can grab the stuff back that you don't want to lose. But for Villainous, like I said, clearing a 3-drop is good. Making a 1-drop on turn 2 is good. I mean, 1-drop 15k, Villainous, pop something pretty good.
Android 13. When this card is played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with 10,000 power or less and KO it. Most cards are 10k are under 3. And a lot of cards that are energy cost 2 or 3 tend to be more than 10k. So I feel like Broly outshines this one when it comes to the Villainous of its archetype. But it does have activate main, limit 1 if your leader card is red Android 13, and you place this card from your hand underneath a red Android card in your battle area, return up to 1 Android card of energy cost of 1 from your drop to your hand. That helps that deck do its cycling process.
Something to think about, since a lot of these cards are kind of side grade or other options to themselves. Like you said, with the Broly, it's very similar as a card. I do think the Broly is a little bit better by targeting just 3 drops, where this one you have to target a 10k, which most of the time, like you said, that's going to be under 3, but still Broly has a wider net. But this card is colored, so if you're running a extra card base where you need red energy, or a unison that you need red energy, this is going to be your option. Otherwise, I think you just go with the Broly, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, and also I think the Broly one said it warps a card, so like...
Oh, yeah.
So if they're playing like Overrealms, it's 1 less card in their drop.
Yeah, and the being able to remove multiple things on Broly with the card attacking is also very nice.
We got Janemba. Activate main, limit 1 for 1 energy. If your opponent has 2 or more energy and you return 1 of your evil incarnate cards or 2 of your villainous cards, none of which have the same name as this card, to your hand, you play this card from your hand. So during your turn, you use the leader's ability to pay 1 energy, play whatever card. The turn on can pay 1 more energy to play this 2-drop right behind it. You do get to cycle cards back to your hand to use their effects again, which is pretty nice, especially those 1-drops we talked about earlier. But
and again with the errata to the leader, that opens up something fantastic, which is anti-dimensional slice. Old promo, did not get much play at the time, but if you don't know what it is, it's a activate battle for 2 energy. You give it evil incarnate plus 15k, and then you play a evil incarnate from your drop area with energy cost 2 or less. So preferably you would want to do that on your opponent's turn to get another trigger on your villainous effect. So something like I'm thinking is turn 1, play a 1-drop, no effect. Turn 2, play another 1-drop, trigger villainous. Or play like your Broly or Android 13 for the 1 energy you trigger. Follow up with Janemba by returning those 2 cards to your hand. Then if you somehow can get energy back in some way, you can play the Gamma, pop this, put it into your drop, and then follow up with an anti-dimensional slice later in the game. So lots of cycling cards to different areas to get value off of them. And I think this deck is going to really shine with a good pilot due to interactions like anti-dimensional slice.
And another good blue X card for defensive plays now. You excited 2 Senzu Beans.
Yeah.
Then we got Dr. Giro. I always forget how to pronounce his name correctly. I like this card for 2 reasons. I like the idea of them trying to support this archetype that wasn't the greatest when it first came down. But hey, bam, we got it here for 2 energy. When this card is played, choose one. Choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost 2 or less and place it at the bottom of its owner's deck. Choose up to 1 of your opponent's unisons, remove 2 markers from it. Doesn't really support the old archetype, if I recall correctly, because I think that was supposed to place cards underneath the leader or the field card or something.
Yeah, it was supposed to place it under the lab. They should have just made it put a 2 or less under the lab. Like it's such an easy thing that they could have done to boost that deck, and they didn't do it. Still, removing a 2 or less is nice, but I think the nicer option is ripping 2 markers.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. For 1 energy, initially, you're pulling 2 markers off a unison, which in some cases may not be a thing for next set because that Shadow Dragon card is coming out, but it's still pretty nice to have that.
Yeah. When are we going to get unisons with barriers?
Oh, man, that's a good question. We get the super combo. It's Lucifer. I think it's his first appearance in the card game.
Yep. If
your leader is black and your life is 4 or less, when this card is used in the combo, draw 1 card. It's searchable with the leader if you want to go this route. You can't play the Vegeta really because if you're charging the color energies, it doesn't work with that.
So also, you can't run a non-villainous battle card, so this is your only option.
That's right. Yeah. No.
Unless you just don't want to run a super combo.
Yeah. So, boom, super combo. There it is. Going to the 3 drops, we got Beerus, which I think is the first villainous card that we've seen so far with Deflect. Also has Offering, which I think is pretty cool. So initially for 1 energy, you're playing a card with Offering. And that's all it has. Yep. And for those who aren't familiar with Offering, it's crit a life, your opponent crits a life, or you draw 2 cards. And you're adding that on top of Villainous. So
25k base.
Oh yeah, 25. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's low to the ground. The only bad thing about this card is that it is a 1 cost 10k, which with all of your battle cards costing 1 or 2 energy to play, you usually will want to use that energy just to board a card instead of comboing with a card. So that's the only bad thing. Of course, it is a multi-color card, so it has to be. But this card is incredible.
Yes.
This is one of the cheaper options that we have for the Offering skill, and the Offering skill being incredibly, incredibly strong. If you know how to read your opponent, this card is really going to shine in the deck, in my opinion. At least in my build, it is really shining.
No, one of my go-tos for AOD a lot of times is just to free play the Janemba because it lets me know if you're like we talked before in the past. Like, do you feel comfortable with your life by taking that crit, or do you keep your life because your hand isn't as strong?
Yep.
Going into the cooler, deflect, double strike, 25k. Auto, limit 1. When this card is played, choose one. Switch up to one of your energies active mode, which is initially a free card then, or you choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, and it gets minus 20,000 power for the turn. I like that secondary effect, but because this card can't be cheaply played in a normal cooler deck, it seems like I'm always going to choose the switch one of my energies active mode when I play this card, unless my opponent has a problematic card I need to get rid of. Mm-hmm. Which could go in really well with the Android 13, which gets rid of a 10k or less card. So, like, if your opponent does have a 4 cost or a 5 cost on board, you can negative by 25 and immediately pay 2 energy if you have the energy available to follow with Android 13. Just get rid of that card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said everything. This card's great. I don't think it really shines in OG Cooler. I feel like this is just a card to throw into the Villainous archetype.
I can't get over the fact that it can be initially a free double strike 25k though.
Yeah,
that's hitting the board.
Yeah, that can also trigger Villainous. This card's fantastic.
Bio Broly, unique dual attack, which I think is the first Villainous card we have that has unique. But auto limit 1, when this card is KO'd, play this card from your drop in rest mode. Like, that's crazy in itself because, like, it's a 20k card, swing. If your opponent tries to get rid of it, they have to, like, work around the idea of what KOing means in order to get rid of it. If they don't, they have to go into it twice just to get rid of it. And it plays itself, which will proc Villainous again.
Yeah. This card specifically says KO'd and not KO'd by a skill.
Yeah.
So even if your opponent wants to attack into this, they're going to have to kill it twice if they really want to remove it. One of the strategies to play against a deck like Villainous is don't let them amass a board, because once they do, they're just going to be dumping your hand every single turn, or every single chance they get. So targeted, consistent removal is the best way to play against a deck like Villainous, and green probably having the best consistent KOing. That color only KO. So this card is going to be the bane for green, and it happens to be a green card. But I feel like red with a lot of negging's not going to have to worry about this. Blue, obviously, blue doesn't KO shit. Yellow does KO some stuff, but you can probably negate its skills before KOing it in yellow. But dual attack 20k is still really, really good no matter what.
Is Pretty Black Hole limited to green leaders?
Yes.
Okay. I know it's a green energy.
No, it is not.
You KO one of your own cards. It's an extra card you could tie into this deck for just some cheeky negates. Pop this card, replay the card, cause your opponent to discard cards.
Yeah, that could work. That could definitely work.
We got Lord Slug, double strike. I'm really liking these 3 drops. I guess it's worth it going into the later games with this deck, because the later you go, it seems like the more powerful these cards are getting. It does have Permanent Bond 2, which this card gains 5,000 power. Auto, when this card is played, you choose it up to one of your opponent's battle cards. In rest mode, you KO it. Auto, if your leader card is a yellow Lord Slug card, when this card is used in a combo, choose it to one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode that isn't attacking and KO it. That seems pretty cool for the Slug, the yellow Slug deck that we're getting this at as well. But I really like the fact that it's just a double strike for potentially 1 energy. It can be a 25k that will KO a card that's in rest mode.
It's necessary for the Slug archetype, and I'm glad that they're supporting that archetype. The 1-drop 10k is again could be a problem.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit too strong, but come on, could it just say like Lord Slug or Villainous for its last effect? But that might be me asking too much, because this archetype already has a really, really strong base of cards.
Bojack, unique. Auto limit 1 for 1 energy. If your leader card is Magenta SH or Bojack Brigade card, and it's your turn, at the end of the battle where you use this card in a combo from your hand or energy in a combo, play this card from your drop, which I think is pretty cool. That the whole Bojack Brigade's extra card that allows you to kind of do all that flippy floppity shit. Auto when this card is played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost greater than or equal to the current energy. Return it to its owner's hand. That can come in handy too, and that's just in general.
Bojack definitely needed the support, 100%. This card does a lot for it, I think, and it's great in this. Any way that you can alternatively play one of your Villainous outside of your leader card effect or tapping its actual energy cost is going to be good.
I think we kind of talked about that with the some card early on. Was it Janemba? Yeah, Janemba for 1 energy. Yeah. So the fact that there's other ways of playing these cards very cheaply is pretty nice. Turles. Once again, unique. Activate main / battle limit 1 energy. If it's your turn and there are 2 or more Villainous cards and or Turtle Crusher Corp cards in your battle area and or combo area, play this card from your hand. Once again, we just talk about like the idea of just having 1 energy to play a card outside using the leader's ability to do that is just fantastic. Now, granted, both this one and I think the Bojack both state that it has to be during your turn, but still, I mean, like, that's still good.
Mm-hmm. This being activate main / battle is what really puts it over for me. Being able to really decide and play it at any speed can put your opponent into weird situations when it comes to like countering and stuff like that. This is kind of talking hypothetically, but sometimes when you attack, your opponent may feel more comfortable because you're going into your attacking steps, and they may tap out and not have a room for a counter anymore. So I like being able to play this in a main or a battle and surprise your opponent with, I mean, it's just a 20k for 1 energy. Like, that's fantastic.
Garlic Jr. Indestructible, which, as it should be. Activate main, limit 1 for 1 yellow energy. If Mako Star is in your battle, play this card from your hand. This does nothing for the Magenta deck, but does everything for the Garlic Jr. deck. And it's just good for the Garlic Jr. deck. It gives you another 3k, a 3-drop on the board. That's a 20k, unlike the EX card that we got back in like EX 13 or whatever it was. So it can survive certain things being necked out better. That one can potentially pop a card by tapping it, but I still like the idea of playing a 20k and keeping this one alive to either swing with or just evolve on top of the 5-drop for 1 energy. It gives you another option.
Yeah, Indestructible is going to be very, very, very relevant. This card can kind of get in the way if you're trying to play your Frieza counter. It is unique, so you can't board multiple and completely lock yourself out without comboing them off. But if you want to be playing your Frieza counter on your opponent's turn, which is still a 1-drop counter no matter what, you just don't get to play unless you have one. You really have to think about when you're playing this card, but putting a Villainous on board that your opponent just cannot interact with outside of like red, this is huge. Having a guaranteed Villainous proc every single turn is this to me, even though it's a unique and indestructible, is going to be a 3 or 4 of just for that reason. And those other copies will just either go to the energy or go to the combo area to put my damn Turles in play. This card is huge.
Next, we're going to tackle the 4-drops. First, starting with the Herudegarn, which has Barrier. First, I think the first one we've seen so far with Barrier. Auto, when this card attacks, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, place it on top of its owner's deck. That's just good overall. Secondary auto, switch this card to rest mode at the end of your turn. Switch up to one of your energies to active mode. I mean, the idea you have an option here, either do I need to get rid of that important card or let I rather restand an energy at the end of my turn. I think they have the versatility of that is really strong.
Mm-hmm. Again, this will play into stuff like playtime's over. If you want to tap out on your turn, maximizing your energy to untap and then have playtime's over open, or your Frieza counter if this is the only card in play. It's great. The first auto, being able to stagnate your opponent's hand even by a little bit with how much Villainous you're triggering, that's going to be really, really annoying. Plus, knowing what your opponent's drawing is always good. Another tech, involving the leader errata. You could run Ectoplasm from set 4. It's a counterplay that you target a Harunagarn and warp it until the start of your next turn, and then you replay it.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
And that is a 0-cost counterplay.
Yeah.
Or it might be a counterattack. I don't remember. It's one of those. But that is really, really strong paired with this Harunagarn. It is a 4-drop, so you're going to be playing it a little bit later in the game. So I don't know what the ratios on all those should be, but it's definitely something to look into because it's a very sneaky play.
Next, we got the Red Ribbon Robot. Auto limit 1 for 1 energy. If it's your turn, when one of your Villainous or Red Ribbon Army cards is removed from the battlefield by a skill, play this card from your hand. Activate main once per turn. Place one of your Villainous or Red Ribbon Army cards in its owner's drop area. This card gains crit for the turn. This card does not have unique. So you can pay 1 to play it using the leader's ability, then immediately activate the main to remove one of your Villainous cards, which then procs the auto, and you can play the second one for 1 energy from your hand, and the first one gains crit. And then you can initially just swing the 25k crit, then activate main on the second one, because it's not limit 1. So you can do it with multiple cards to pop the first one you played.
That, like I said, this is paired very good with Ectoplasm. You remove the Harunagarn from your battle area, follow it up with this. You can remove a card using like your Gamma 1 to throw this out. Like there's a lot of ways to proc that auto. Or what says if it's your turn, so forget about what I said about the Ectoplasm. Unless it's a counterplay, if it's a counterplay, then we're talking.
Yeah.
But this is going to be paired very well with the Gamma 1. Just 1 energy, 25k. That auto is not locked to a specific energy, so like the other 4-drop Villainous cards, we do have to wait a while to play them, but this one can be dropped pretty early on. As soon as a card is triggered or removed. And like I said, with you want to have consistent removal, this is a reason why you don't want to rely on board wipes, because board wipes tend to be costly, and they're just going to follow up with cards like Red Ribbon Robot.
Going into SS Broly, auto when this card is played from your hand, it gains triple strike for the turn. I mean, that alone is good enough to wait for turn 4 for 1 energy. Secondary auto, if your opponent has 3 or more energy, when this card is played, choose all of your opponent's battle cards and it gets minus 25,000 power for the turn. So not only that, but like you're paying 1 energy to play a triple striker for 1 turn, that's 25k, but it's also initially wiping your opponent's board. And if I recall correctly, it's a 4-drop SS Broly, and one of the Broly chains from 2 sets ago, I think it was, that plays a 6-drop Broly, the extra card Broly. I think one of their cards pulls a 4-drop from your deck, if I recall correctly. So it works really well with that engine.
There's this card, while it's very simple in text wise, there's a lot going on with this card. This is going to be probably the card for the deck. I can see builds of this deck that just solely rely on just loading the field up and not doing anything, like pecking your opponent down slightly, and then leaving your opponent at 3 life for the rest of the game, and then dropping this dude and just emptying your opponent's hand. It's a base 25k, but for 1 energy, triple strike 25k is really, really good compared to other 25k or other triple strikes that are in the 30 to 35 range. It is kind of lackluster, but you have to think you're playing 1 energy and possibly dumping your opponent's hand if you're playing it right.
And I want to clarify, my brain skipped over it. You don't get the triple strike when it's played from your hand. So in that Broly deck, if you play it from your deck, you're only getting the board wipe part of it. But it's still pretty good, though.
Yeah, there's still nothing wrong with a board wipe for that.
Going over the last of the 4-drops, we got Meta Cooler. This is a very unique one, not only because it has a unique skill, but because of its wording. It's very confusing. I don't know if they fix it on the site or not. I'll let Jimmy talk about that in a second, but the card is read this way. Permanent. If you have a Villainous card in play, negate this card's energy exhaust in all areas, which I think is fantastic. It just allows you to have a nice little charge. Auto, when this card is played from your hand, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost 5 or less, in rest mode and KO it, which could be better than what we've already seen already for card removals on just removing one particular card. But yeah, this card is read differently on the site.
So if you went to Bandai's TCG Plus site and looked at this card, I haven't checked it in the past couple of days, so they may have fixed it. But this card read exactly the same until you got to the auto, and then I don't know it word for word, but it was essentially when this card is played, choose one, and it was play 2 infinite multiplication meta coolers from your deck or drop area or whatever, and then the other one was play a 2-drop Villainous card from your hand. So
there was some weirdness going on with that.
Yeah, it's probably like the strangest thing I think we've had in the Dragon Ball card game in a long time, because the text makes sense. It's not like they just screwed up and put like the text from another Metacooler card on it, an existing Metacooler card. It was definitely at one point in development written like that. I don't think there's ever been any mention of it from Bandai. But I think the going consensus is they're just going to play the card as it's read and just don't worry about the other text, which is kind of unfortunate because I would have really, really enjoyed having one more Metacooler support and also being able to get a 2-for-1 off of one card play is really, really nice.
And going over the last Villainous card is the 5-drop SS Broly. If you're getting to turn 5 with this deck, cool. Here's a 5-drop for you. When this card is played, during your opponent's next turn, reduce the energy cost of the first extra you activate from under one of your Broly BR cards, which only works for the Broly deck. Auto, when this card attacks, choose it to one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. That's fantastic right there, because this card is a dual attack. The auto will proc on both swings. It is also deflect and unique. And then you activate main limit 1 for 2 green energy. If your opponent has 2 or more energy, and there are 6 or more cards under your green Broly BR card, play this card from your hand. So 2 of these autos definitely works for the green Broly deck, which I'm excited for. But I do like the idea that the auto that KOs a card is just good regardless of what leader you're playing with.
I do wish there was another way to play this card in Villainous other than just getting to turn 5. Because it is... The dual attack and dual removal is really nice on a 25k, but compared to like the 4-drop Broly and some of the other cards in this package, it is kind of lackluster for a 5-drop. I would have liked to seen maybe something else with it, but I definitely think it's worth running maybe at like a 2 of if you get that far in the game.
I was thinking the same thing, because like I can't think how often you're going to get to turn 5 with a lot of decks now anyways. So
yeah, this card is great just on the surface, and it is incredible for the extra card Broly deck. This card has put in a lot of work in my build, in my testing. I don't know if it will last the long run once other people kind of crack the deck, because I have not put too much work into it, but I have really enjoyed this card in that list. But I found it kind of lackluster for being like such a top-end card for Villainous.
Yeah. So that is the Magenta deck. Overall, I'm excited still to play it. And it should be out in a couple days. So open your crack your boxes up. Best of luck on your pulls. And we're going to go ahead and leave it out with that. And I'll let Jimmy say the final word, because I know he likes doing it so much.
Oh, shit. I'm usually waiting for Jake to say something, but Jake's not here.
He isn't here.
And he's not. He had a pissing competition. He unfortunately lost.
I know, it's crazy.
He got disqualified for doping. It's really weird. Been drinking too much Pedialyte. But Cards plays that one guy that's sometimes here, that's sometimes taking a break out.